Chinese President Xi Jinping traveled to Moscow for a 3-day visit this week, meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin before signing an agreement to expand economic ties between their countries. Now, the two leaders also emphasized their commitment to safeguarding their own energy security. Though their countries have been at odds in the past, the budding partnership between these two powers has been warily watched by Western countries. What conclusions can we draw from this alliance? Well, joining me now to discuss this is China expert Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. You can follow him on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you so much, Tony.
So your thoughts on the growing relationship between China and Russia. Can they really trust each other?
No, they can't really trust each other, but at least for the moment, they are working very closely together. And although they may never have an enduring partnership, we don't really care what Moscow and Beijing are going to do in the 2050s or 2060s. Right now, they are upending the world order. They're very clear about what they're saying. Xi Jinping, when he left Vladimir Putin a few hours ago, actually said that right now the world is seeing changes that have not been witnessed for 100 years. And Xi Jinping also said that when China and Russia work together, they are driving events around the globe. So that's a quite arrogant statement, and it's very clear where this is going. The world is dividing into camps, and China and Russia are forming the core of a new axis. And that means, looks like a new Cold War.
So what does this relation look like? I've been reading the various articles, people examining the body language of the two leaders, and it appears the consensus is that Xi Jinping is kind of the leader in this relationship, Putin, the younger brother, so to speak, taking his cues from China. I mean, really, what does Russia have to bring to the table? They've shown themselves not to be the great military power that they had held themselves out to be. It appears, from my perspective, that China is really the puppet master in this. What do you say?
Yeah, that's right. China is by far the stronger of the two. But Vladimir Putin is willing to challenge the world in ways that Xi Jinping doesn't. And that means that Russia is, in a sense, driving that partnership between the two of them. And that means that Xi Jinping has got to bail out Vladimir Putin from time to time, like about now. So although Russia is the far weaker of the two, it is the one that is actually disturbing the world and forcing the Chinese to support them.
What does that look like going forward? I mean, there's been a lot of pressure put on by the U.S. saying China, if they really want to help, they need to broker a peace deal by telling Russia to get out of Ukraine, warning them not to provide military support. What do you think the future now looks like?
Well, I'm a little bit pessimistic because although the Biden administration keeps on warning China not to provide lethal assistance, China, in fact, has been doing so, and it's been doing it from the first weeks of the war. And recently, in the last couple of months, we've seen some very blatant transfers of weapons from China to Russia. So I think that Xi Jinping right now believes that President Biden is hollow, and he doesn't respect the United States, which means that Xi Jinping is probably going to do things which are going to cause tragedy for a good portion of humankind. And right now, I think that we have to be prepared for the worst because the Chinese, they're looking at the war in Ukraine, thinking the West is not very effective. And that's a big green light for Xi Jinping to engage in some provocation at the other end of the Eurasian landmass.
Taiwan,
Japan, Philippines, India, or maybe even the U.S. Remember, Tony, that there are these very dangerous intercepts of the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force in the South China Sea and in China's peripheral waters. One of those intercepts could go terribly wrong, and we could suffer a loss of American life. We almost lost our EP-3, the U.S. Navy unarmed reconnaissance plane, in 2001. The Australians almost lost a P-8 last year because of a dangerous Chinese intercepts. And there was a very dangerous intercept of a U.S. Air Force reconnaissance plane in December.
Gordon Chang, I want to thank you for joining us today. I know you've got to get to another interview, so I want to thank you for joining us. Always great to talk with you, and obviously we're going to be tracking this very, very closely in the days ahead.